So Aston Villa won, Arsenal 0, and what a performance that was once again from Aston Villa, who, look, I made a video a couple of weeks ago talking about Aston Villa and talking about how they could be Champions League contenders in terms of getting into the Champions League for next season, in terms of the players that they have, the way the club is run, and what Unai Emery has instilled and built with Aston Villa in less than a year. I was very much believing that this side could get into the Champions League, and having watched them in the last two games, their win versus Arsenal and their win versus Manchester City, I think now the question might become even bigger. Aston Villa currently sit in third in the league. If we look at the league table, 2 points off Liverpool, who are top of the league. They've beaten Arsenal, they've beaten Manchester City, the two sides who we would all feel are contending for the Premier League as well. And Aston Villa beat them in the last 2 game weeks, and look, it was a very big win from Aston Villa. It was a different performance to what we've seen them against Manchester City. Against Manchester City, they absolutely blew them away. It was one of the best performances I think I've seen from a team against Manchester City. If I'm being honest, that level of domination, I don't think I've ever seen a team dominate them in that kind of way in a long, long time. So it was an extraordinary performance. And look, against Arsenal, they got the early goal through John McGinn. I think there was maybe a bit of... They were sort of caught in between two minds. Should they defend? Should they attack? And a few times on the counter-attack, they could have got a second goal, and it didn't quite work out that way. But ultimately, look, it was a brilliant performance from Aston Villa. They shut Arsenal out. The likes of Saka, the likes of Odegaard didn't have the same sort of influence in these type of games that we've seen from them in the past. And look, what a result for Aston Villa. And I do think, what do Aston Villa need to do to be taken seriously in the Premier League? And it's been mental. Like this time last year, you looked at Aston Villa under Steven Gerrard, who were going absolutely nowhere. They were going closer to the Championship than they were, the top half of the table. And Unai Emery's come in, and in the space of a season, he has transformed that club from top to bottom. I mean, don't get me wrong. They already had great, some great players in there. I think we all knew that, considering where Aston Villa were a couple of seasons leading up to last season. But Unai Emery's just taken them on another level. Like, he's taken them on another level. Brought the best out of Ollie Watkins, who now looks like one of the best strikers in the league. Emi Martinez, I think, is one of the best goalkeepers in the world, in my opinion. I don't think he is the best goalkeeper in the world. I think Alisson is. But I think Martinez is not a million miles away from him. We saw some of the saves he made in the game. We saw the double save he made versus Haaland. And even midfield-wise, they've been outstanding. Douglas Luiz, John McGinn's looking absolutely brilliant. Pau Torres at centre-back, I think, has been a sensational signing. Leon Bailey's coming into his best. Moussa Diaby is looking better and better with each game week. And I don't see any reason why Aston Villa can't challenge for the title. They've beaten the teams around them. They've shown after 16 games that they can compete. Yes, they've had a couple of disappointing results on the road. The hammering versus Newcastle, the defeat to Liverpool. I do think that was at the start of the season, and I think they've shown a lot more progression since then. I know they had that defeat to Nottingham Forest away from home as well. But sometimes these things can happen in a season when you have European football as well. And this is all new to Aston Villa. Maybe not necessarily new to Unai Emery, but new for a lot of these players, who haven't been in this situation before in terms of managing your body. Especially when you're new to European football. Like, these things can catch up with you. Look at Brighton, for example, who are struggling in the league this season in comparison to how they looked last season. And I do think a strong part of that has got to do with European football. But look, I mean, can Aston Villa actually win the Premier League? I mean, that's a big, question. And look, as a Liverpool fan myself, I've seen Liverpool have some extraordinary seasons, play some of the best football, football I didn't even think was possible at times. Wins, results, points tallies, winning runs, I just genuinely didn't think were possible, and still not win the league. I've seen Liverpool finish with 97 points and not win the league. I've seen Suarez produced one of the best individual performances from any player in a given season, and that still wasn't enough to win the league. Like, to win the league, you need to be very good, obviously, but you do need a bit of luck along the way as well. You need luck with injuries. You need decisions sometimes to go your way. I think a lot of them do balance themselves out, to be fair, but you do need a lot of luck. You need to be very good, but you do need a bit of luck, and sometimes you'll need help from elsewhere as well, because you can't always be at your best in every game week. And look, experience does massively count as well. And to be fair, if I'm being honest, I think most Aston Villa fans watching this video, and if you were to speak to most Aston Villa fans up and down the country, would they actually believe they're going to win the league this year? I don't think they would. I think that would be a bit premature. But considering where they were a year ago, And even at the start of the season, I think if you spoke to most Aston Villa fans and you said, what would you be happy with this season? I think a lot of them would have said, if we get into the Europa League, that would be a fantastic season. It's an upgrade on the season previous. And considering the level of quality that's in the league, I think a top 6 finish even if they drop out of the top 4, I think even if they finish 5th or 6th, that's a brilliant season for Aston Villa. But you're looking at them now and you're thinking, like, realistically, you're looking at Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City to finish in the top 4. And then you're looking at Aston Villa, I think. I think Tottenham will be there. Newcastle might be there. Man United are in absolute crisis. To be fair, Newcastle haven't looked great recently either. Chelsea are an absolute mess. So I think Aston Villa are nailed on for Champions League football. And winning the title, I think, is a bit too far. But being a contender, I think, look, they could be. Let's not forget, they have Tottenham, Liverpool and Newcastle to come to Villa Park. But look, with the way Aston Villa are playing, the fact that they're incrementally getting better, let's not forget Unai Emery. This is his first full season in charge. I think big things are coming to Villa. And obviously looking at the game as a whole, as I was saying, like, Villa were by far the better side, in my opinion. Arsenal had a lot of good chances, and Arsenal probably controlled the game because Villa had been a goal up, and they were obviously defending their lead and managing their lead. There was obviously a few contentious decisions. I mean, the handball situation at the end, I think it was the right decision in the end. You could argue Matty Cash handled it first, but all in all, I do think it was the right decision. You can see it hitting off Havertz on multiple occasions. The penalty decision, like a couple of minutes prior to that, when Douglas Luiz kicked Gabriel Jesus. Now, personally, I don't think that is a penalty, but in the Liverpool Crystal Palace game earlier that day, a penalty was given for far less. I think the inconsistency in the refereeing decisions is very annoying because, as a fan, you're looking at it and thinking, well, if that was a penalty earlier, how is this not a penalty? It's a little strange, but ultimately, I do think it was the right decision. And I think, to be fair, Arsenal were quite poor. They were lethargic. And I do look at Arsenal and I think they definitely have dropped from last season. There's no doubt about it. I still think they have a lot of the ingredients to be a title winner. They're just missing one or two things. A quality striker, players who can put the ball in the back of the net on a more consistent basis. The likes of Odegaard, Saka haven't looked as good this season. And yeah, I think Arsenal in the January transfer window, it's going to be huge for them. And looking at some results from the weekend's action and looking at some of the weekend's big talking points and big moments, we mentioned Liverpool obviously there. As a Liverpool fan myself, we beat Crystal Palace 2-1. Not the fans, the team obviously. With that result and with Aston Villa beating Arsenal, it does now mean that Liverpool sit top of the Premier League. And it's actually the first time that this has happened, that Liverpool have sat top of the league after a game week, I think since like December 2021 or something like that, November 2021, or it might even be further than that. It's a little bit mental, isn't it, considering how good Liverpool have been in the last couple of years. But last season we were obviously horrendous. And in terms of this game, it was a bit of a mad game, to be honest with you, because for the opening 75 minutes, that was Liverpool's worst performance of the season. And one of the worst performances in a long time. It was nearly worse than last season, and some of our performances last season were terrible. But we didn't even have a single shot on target until Salah's goal in the 76th minute. We didn't have a shot on target against them when they had 11 men on the field. And it's Crystal Palace we're playing. Do you get me? Bournemouth were cutting them to shreds during the week. Our movement was poor. Passing was poor. Do you know what? We just looked absolutely knackered. Playing obviously on a Wednesday night against Sheffield United and then playing Saturday morning versus Palace. I know Klopp tends to give out a lot about the 12:30 kickoffs, but I think he does have a point. It's such a short changeover, and I think Liverpool were bound to not look their best. But at the same time, some of the performances were just really, really poor from some of the players. And Palace got a goal up through that penalty, which was a little bit mental. A minute and 45 seconds after the challenge happened, they then go and give the penalty, which I thought was a little bit unusual. I didn't think it was a penalty in the first place. And then the fact they waited a minute and 45 seconds, what happened during that minute? Why did the referee not stop the game? It was a little bit bizarre, to be honest with you. But the thing about Liverpool this season is we've got that sort of Jurgen Klopp mentality monsters sort of attitude back. The word mentality monsters, it probably gets brandished out quite a lot, but it's true. I mean, no side have collected more points from losing positions this season than Liverpool. I mean, so many times I've looked at us and thought, we're done, we're beaten. Against Newcastle away, we were down to 10 men. I thought there's no chance we'll even get a draw from this game, and somehow we won it with Darwin Núñez scoring twice. We came from behind against Fulham to win. Yes, we drew with Luton, but we still came behind to score a late equaliser. We came from behind against Manchester City to get a draw. And now we've come from behind against Palace. And there's probably another game in there that I forgot. I think Bournemouth at home, we went behind and came back to win that as well. I mean, it's not ideal. It's not sustainable. You can't do this every game week, because eventually when you face a very good team, they'll put you to the sword. And maybe we've been a little bit lucky in terms of the way we've been, we've, like, even that goal from Salah, the deflections and everything else, like a little bit of luck. And sometimes that's needed. And that's what I said previously. To win a league title, sometimes you need a bit of luck. And to be fair, we got it with that Salah goal. Ayew obviously got sent off before the Salah goal as well. I've seen a lot of people not happy about that on social media. I thought it was the right decision, to be fair. He kicks the ball away. It's a petulant foul. We know referees now give yellow cards when you do kick the ball away. I mean, sometimes they don't and sometimes they forget, but usually they do. So I think all in all, it was the right decision. And Harvey Elliott obviously comes up trump with the winner. And yeah, just so clutch from Liverpool. Elliott getting the goal. Like, our bench is very strong. Our bench saves us so many times. Gakpo was brilliant. Elliott was very good. I thought when Trent went into midfield, we looked a lot better as well. So, yeah, and obviously Joe Gomez came on. I thought he was brilliant as well at right back. So, look, are Liverpool going to win the league? I mean, I still think City win it. We're not the finished article. Like, we need a defensive midfielder. And a lot of work still needs to be done. And it's a long season. There's a long way to go. We can't get carried away. But look, it was a very good result. And considering how bad the performances have been in the last week or so, like, there's a case that we weren't the better team in any of the games we played this week. I mean, we were against Sheffield United, but we weren't great. The fact we're winning when we're not playing well is a good sign. And that can only bode us better, sort of going into some crucial games coming up for Liverpool. United and Arsenal in the next two games, so two big matches. Manchester City got back on track as well. Big result for them away to Luton. They were a goal down at half-time. Adebayo with a towering header from Townsend's cross, and that put Luton a goal up and in dreamland in many ways. And look, you were watching that game and thinking, surely Man City are going to turn it around. I know they didn't have Haaland. Obviously, they didn't have Doku as well. You could tell they were struggling to create chances, and the flow of how they were playing was not the same. Luton were a lot more comfortable at the back than they would have been had Haaland been there. But look, they found a way. Bernardo Silva gets a goal. Grealish gets a goal. A few shaky moments towards the end, a few chances for Luton, but they get over the line, and that's the sign of a great team, to dig deep. And for Man City, on a bit of a bad run, 4 games without a win, that was a much-needed result for Manchester City. Look, they're still in the title race. I've seen some people write them off already. I think that's absolutely mental. They're going to get Haaland back. They're going to get Kevin De Bruyne back. They're going to get their best players back. And they're the only team, I think, in the league. I know Liverpool have done it in the past as well. But looking at them, they're the only team that gives me confidence that they can go on a 10, 15 game unbeaten run. And going down the home stretch, having been there and done it on so many occasions, that does stand to you. And I don't think you can discount City. They're still there. And look, this was a great result. But again, Luton, as I've said in previous weeks, very tough team to beat in their own backyard. Teams struggle when they go there. And it was no surprise that this wasn't easy for Man City. Running through some other talking points from this weekend's games. Tottenham absolutely demolished Newcastle 4-1. Newcastle are looking an absolute mess at the minute. Obviously, a lot of injuries. They're really mounting up. I think, obviously, playing in the Champions League as well, I think has been an issue for them in terms of managing their squad and everything else. And yeah, like, the more I look at Newcastle, the more I look at their injury issues, the more I think European football might be a stretch too far when you look at how many good teams are in the league right now. And fair play to Tottenham. Big result for them. 5 games, obviously, without a win. Ange Postecoglou, as I've said before, is a good manager. He'll get that team playing well. He'll get results. Whether he'll be an elite manager, I don't know. I think it's way too premature to say that. But look, I think they're going quite well. And look, Richarlison scoring. I mean, who could have saw that coming? Udogie obviously getting a goal as well. They managed the game a lot better than previous weeks. They didn't leak as many chances. They didn't look as jaded or as tired as previous weeks. And a big result for Tottenham. And they're definitely still in the conversation to finish in the Champions League spaces. Make no question about that. I think all the title talk a few weeks ago was very premature. Obviously they do have injuries and everything else. But I think getting into the Champions League is still very likely for Tottenham. And again, considering where Tottenham were last season, towards the end of last season, I think they'd be very happy if they finish top four. And even if they get into Europe, to be fair. Just looking through some of the other results from the weekend. Man United, obviously home to Bournemouth. Straightforward win. Easy work. Yeah, not the case. They lost 3-0 to Bournemouth. Yeah, it's just mental. Like, they say when it rains, it pours. And for Man United, you were thinking, right, they beat Chelsea. They looked very good in doing so. Is this maybe the start of a little resurgence going into what's going to be a very tricky period, a season-defining week for Man United in many ways? And they just got absolutely blown to pieces. I mean, they weren't even... Like, this could have been 4 or 5-0. Like, this wasn't even a contest. Bournemouth were by far the better side. They controlled the game. They played the ball through the lines very well. And it was very comfortable. And considering Bournemouth have never won at Old Trafford before, like, the fact they beat them the way they did. And, like, they obviously had a goal ruled out towards the end as well. I think for a handball. Like, that was a little bit harsh in my opinion. But, yeah, Man United are just an absolute mess. As a Liverpool fan, I love to see it. I enjoy it. I worship it. I live for it. Do you get me? But it's mental because you often wonder, would there have been a drop-off with Ten Hag this season? But it's just an absolute mess. And you look at their next 4 games. They play Bayern Munich, Liverpool away. They play West Ham and Villa. Like, that's going to be, I mean, they might beat West Ham. Maybe it'll beat Bayern with the fact they have to rest all their players. Going to Anfield and then Villa as well. Like, it's going to be very, very tough for them. And honestly, like, you look at this week for Erik Ten Hag, there's a possibility that this week they could finish bottom of their Champions League group if they don't beat Bayern Munich, which is likely. And if they lose to Liverpool at Anfield, which is also probably very likely, I mean, Ten Hag could be sacked. This time next week, he mightn't have a job. Like, it's just... And it's crazy because they won a trophy this season, or this year, earlier in the year. And it's just all falling apart. It's an absolute mess. I know they all won, like, Player of the Month. Maguire won it and Ten Hag won it. I mean, yeah, I suppose they won all their games in November, but they were playing fairly poor teams. But yeah, look, fair play to Bournemouth though. Like, they've really turned things around under Iriola, playing great football, couple of wins on the bounce. And do you know what? I think Iriola's probably a contender maybe to win Manager of the Month in December now with some of their recent results. Senesi looks very good. Solanke scoring, Philip Billing scoring. So yeah, onwards and upwards for Bournemouth. But for Manchester United, the crisis just, like, things are so bad at Man United. Sometimes you think it can never get worse, and then they just go out and have a result like that. So, but at least Man United fans can say that they're not as bad as Chelsea, because they lost 2-0 away to Everton. And considering Chelsea are also, a big club in terms of where they were a couple of years ago. I mean, they won a Champions League just 4 years ago. In 2021, even less than 4 years to be fair. I mean, bizarre, absolutely bizarre what's happened with Chelsea. I mean, Todd Bowley, like, he's almost like when you play career mode drunk or something. He's just gone out and bought a load of random players under 21. Some of them might come good, some of them might not come good, and it's absolutely blown up because they look a million miles off what we expected them to do. I mean, to think Moses Caicedo had the chance to go to Liverpool, and I think if he had a sign for Liverpool, we win the league. I think we're probably 3-4 points clearer now. I think Caicedo is an even better player if he signs for Liverpool. The fact he went to Chelsea, I mean, look, maybe he was offered more money, maybe there was more to it. Maybe he thought, Chelsea and Liverpool, I suppose, weren't a million miles apart last season in the table, although we finished 5th, they finished 11th, so maybe they were. But maybe he just thought Chelsea was a more ambitious project. I don't know what it was, but I'd imagine he's absolutely quaking in his boots now. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's probably getting well paid. He probably still sleeps quite well at night. I'm sure he does. He's a young lad. I'm sure he'll still go on to do many great things. But yeah, like, that was an absolute howler of a decision from him, wasn't it? And for Chelsea in general, played off the park, never looked like winning the game, poor. They just look an absolute mess. They're currently 12th in the table, and if Everton didn't have a 10 points deduction, they'd be 4 points ahead of them, and they'd be 13th, Chelsea. Like, they're closer to the relegation zone than they are the European places. Like, it's just mental, absolutely mental. And their signings have been poor. Pochettino hasn't worked at all. And yeah, I think Chelsea are in an absolute mess. And do you know what the thing is? As bad as things are with Man United, and look, Liverpool, my club, have been there before. We've had very bad seasons, finishing 7th or 8th. Arsenal have obviously been there in recent times. Do you know, like, these teams can have these moments like Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool. But at least they're big historic clubs, and you always feel like at some point they'll get their act together. They're always going to attract big players. Chelsea, like, they're just not the same Chelsea that they were a couple of years ago. And especially with the amount of money that they're forking out on transfers. Like, if Everton are getting penalised, I think Chelsea could be in massive trouble in the next few years. And honestly, I think the days of Chelsea being a top team like they were 4 or 5 years ago is over. I really do. I know, like, look, they have money. You know, I'm sure they're always going to attract big players. I'm sure they might be able to turn things around at some point. But I just think the whole project and everything has just been an absolute mess. And Chelsea are in, like, if Man United are in a crisis, then Chelsea, I don't know what they're in. Do you know what I mean? They're in, they're beyond the crisis, really. Fair play to Everton, though, like, another big win for them. 3 wins on the bounce now, 3 clean sheets on the bounce. I think Sean Dyche, look, I think he should be a contender for Manager of the Month this year as well, or this month as well. To think Everton would be, if they didn't get that 10 points deduction, they wouldn't be far off the European places, and maybe we'd be talking about Everton getting into Europe. I don't think that would have happened anyway if they didn't get their points deduction, but fair play. The Corey scoring, he's been immense. And yeah, like, Everton are 100% staying in the league. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. And yeah, another big result at home at Goodison Park. And I think Everton maybe have got their fear factor back a little bit in terms of Goodison Park was always a tough place, especially as a Liverpool fan, always difficult place to go. And for a long time, the last couple of years, it became a very easy place to go. But now, like, they look like they're not back to, Everton under, their best in terms of, like, when they had David Moyes or whatever, but they're starting to get results and they're starting to become a very difficult team to beat. Just running through some other results. Fulham absolutely battered West Ham. Like, speaking of David Moyes, you wouldn't usually see his teams get results like this, so this is a bit of a mad one. 5 different scores for Fulham. Interesting enough, Fulham have scored 13 goals now in the last 3 games. They obviously beat Nottingham Forest 5-0 during the week as well. Do you know what the thing was? When Fulham played at Anfield, it was like, they're a good team. Like, they are a good team. And I remember thinking, like, how are they where they are in the league? Like, they've got some good players. Willian was looking good. Harry Wilson was coming on strong. Vinicius was causing issues. And I just felt like if they can take the confidence from that defeat, they'll be fine. They'll be nowhere near the relegation zone. They'll be in and around mid-table, and fair play, like 5-0, some result. Some of the other big talking points from Saturday: Sheffield United got a win versus Brentford. McAtee, I don't know if any of you lads seen his goal, but it was an absolute cracker of a goal. I think he's on loan from Man City is what I heard. Looks a very, very good player. Thought he played very well against Liverpool during the week as well. The other young lad, Brooks, looks a good player as well. And look, Chris Wilder coming in, a man who knows Sheffield United inside and out. Great buzz around the fans, great buzz around the stadium. It's going to be an enormous task for Sheffield United to stay in the league with, even with Chris Wilder coming back. But what they have given themselves is a bit of hope, a bit of a chance, and fair play. Big win, and it definitely gives them a chance now going into the next couple of weeks. Brighton drew 1-1 with Burnley. Good result as well for Burnley, in fairness. Like, Brighton, tough place to go usually, and it was a good draw, albeit they conceded a late goal from Adingra. They'll still be relatively happy they got a point. Brighton have definitely fallen off, there's absolutely no doubt about it. Injuries and obviously playing in Europe is catching up with them. They don't seem to have the same aura about them as last season or even earlier in the year when they were looking very strong. I think I was looking at the statistics. They've won 2 games in their last 10, Brighton. So quite unusual to have not won this game. They've had a couple of disappointing results, no doubt about it. I remember they drew with Sheffield United at home as well. So disappointing result for De Zerbi and Brighton, but great result for Burnley. Good point for them. And again, it just, especially with Sheffield United winning, Everton winning, at least they're not getting too far. They're not getting cut adrift too far. So good result for Burnley, in fairness. And last but not least, Wolves, Nottingham Forest, 1-1. All the talk about Steve Cooper getting sacked, I thought, was a little bit premature. Like, Forest, considering where they were a couple of years ago, how, taking them into the league, keeping them in the league. They've never been in the relegation zone this season, so I thought all the talk about him getting sacked was a little bit mental, to be honest with you. And look, they maybe could have won this game, maybe they should have won this game, but in the end, the draw, not a bad result. Wolves are the type of team that always play well but don't win, and I think that is something that will frustrate their manager, no doubt about it. But in the end, the draw, I think Forest will be happy with that. We'll finish things up with how the league table looks. Liverpool sitting on top with 37 points. Hopefully that stays the way. You'll see Arsenal there. You'll see Villa. Man City are in 4th. Tottenham are in 5th. Man United 6th. And if you go further down, look at Chelsea in 12th. Absolutely mental, isn't it? Sheffield United still bottom of the league despite that win. But Luton, Burnley, Sheffield United, the 3 sides who've been consistently in the bottom 3 so far this season. And unfortunately, it is going to stay that way for now. Anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. If you enjoy this content, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought some of the weekend's games, some of the weekend's talking points. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you when I see you.